Hello, everyone. This is Mark Bentley with the Institute of Nonprofit Event Training. I'm excited to introduce to you our first of hopefully many encouragement webinar series we have here throughout the year, just being impacted by COVID-19 and being encouraged to find different ways besides just getting information to you. We also want to meet you where you're at as a nonprofit leader. And if you're not a nonprofit leader and whatever other industry you're at right now, to figure out ways to continue to keep spirits high, to give encouragement, and to continue to love our community, which is something that we focus on with Institute of Net. So I'm excited to introduce Jaccob Slavin, a good friend and a defenseman with the Carolina Hurricanes. But before we get to introducing him, just a little introductory video to introduce to you for those of you who may not know what we do here at the Institute of Net. So take a second and watch this video.
Meet Sally. Sally is on a trip to lunch with her friends. On their way, they see this sweet homeless man who asked for some food. They invited him to join them for lunch and bought him a nice hot meal. He was so grateful, and Sally felt wonderful after being able to help. This got Sally thinking, what if we provided ways to not just give food, but to give a nice, hot, dignified meal to those in need? There she started her nonprofit that exists to love and serve those less fortunate through great food and dignified interactions. Unfortunately, Sally has never worked for a nonprofit and has no nonprofit experience. Now she must start a board, create a budget, raise funds, purchase the food, hire staff, file her taxes, run events, and on and on and on. Sally is overwhelmed, and her hope of helping others is becoming a discouragement because she doesn't know how to grow. She cannot hire experts in those fields because she has not been able to generate enough funds as a new nonprofit with only a few donors. But what if Sally could afford to hire those with experience to come alongside her to help and teach her? That is where the Institute of Nonprofit Event Training comes in. The Institute of Nonprofit Event Training is a nonprofit that raises money to help pay for those services so Sally can get the help she needs to grow her impact. The Institute of Net believes that with great training and extra capacity, nonprofits can put on great development events, which are the most important tool when it comes to fundraising. The Institute of Net helps nonprofits, like Sally's, raise more money through these events, so she has the funds to buy more food, as well as hire the experts in the other areas that she struggles. Now, Sally is able to be more efficient in the way she runs the nonprofit, and this ultimately allows her to feed and love more people. The Institute of Net exists because our communities need our nonprofits. Our goal is to love and support those nonprofit leaders so those nonprofits can increase their impact.
All right, well, thanks for watching that, and hopefully that does gives a good explanation of who we are for those who may not know us at the Institute of Net. We exist because our nonprofits must exist. We believe nonprofits change communities and we need them desperately. And while the nonprofits are in the front lines helping us in our community in so many different ways, they need help as well. And we exist to be able to help them specifically through event training and event planning. We plan events for them. We do consulting with them. We do educational classes for nonprofit leaders. And during this coronavirus and social distancing, we've adapted a lot to do online through these webinars, through our website. We're doing blogs as well. So check it out at instituteofnet.com to be able to see those. And we would love to help out and meet you guys where you're at. We're a nonprofit, so we raise funds to be able to do the work we do, so we can support you as a nonprofit as best as we can without having to take your money and depending on the service. With that as well, we also do event planning for profits or for large nonprofits so that we can be able to raise more money to be able to support our cause through our revenue generating service. And then 100% of that revenue goes to helping the small and new nonprofits that we serve. So check us out. If you haven't heard from us, you can shoot me an email, mark@instituteofnet.com. I'd love to set up a Zoom meeting with you or a phone call or buy you a cup of coffee when we're allowed to after social distancing. But with that, I'm excited to be able to get this specific webinar started with my good friend, Jaccob Slavin. Jacob, again, is a Carolina Hurricanes defenseman. He's been with the team for several years, and that's what brought him here to the Raleigh area. So, hey, Jacob, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Mark. Excited to be here and be on this webinar with you.
Give me 1 second here. I need to get the video going for you. This is our first time doing the guest appearance, so we need to make sure that we're getting it going. I've got my tech guru, aka my wife, in the other room helping me out. Good. All right, we got Jacob on. So anyway, Jacob, tell me a little bit about yourself. Why don't you start with where you're from originally, and then a little bit about your early career, specifically junior career in hockey.
Yeah. So Jacob, born and raised in Denver, Colorado, just a small town north of Denver called Erie is where my family grew up. And I have 4 siblings, 2 older, 2 younger. We all played hockey. Grew up in a Christian home. It's a huge part of my life is my faith in Christ. And so played hockey all the way. I think I started skating from the time I was 2 years old, on my first team, 2.5, whatever it was. And so hockey's always kind of been in my life. Early junior career, I was playing in Chicago for 2 years, and that's my first year in Chicago is when I got drafted by the Canes, and then I was there for 2 years. Also met my wife while I was in Chicago, and then played 2 years at Colorado College, and then after my sophomore season at CC, my wife and I got married, and we moved out here to Raleigh. And so now we're in my 5th season with the Canes, and loving it. Absolutely love the organization, love the community here in Raleigh, and just love North Carolina as a whole. So it's been awesome.
Awesome, man. So you mentioned meeting your wife there. Tell me a little bit about how you met Kylie. I think that's a fun story.
Yes, I've told it to you multiple times, but so super random story about how my wife and I met. My wife's name's Kylie. And so I was playing hockey in Chicago. She is from Southern Illinois, which is about 3.5 hours from where I was at. So it really has nothing to do with how we met, but kind of enabled us to meet. But so I was playing junior hockey in Chicago, and I was extremely bored. I wasn't in school at the time. All I did was play hockey. I was at the rink a couple hours a day. And so I had a lot of time on my hands. And so there was one day I was just kind of deep into a Twitter path, bunny hole or whatever, but rabbit hole, and just profile after profile, just reading through tweets and stuff. And I came across one of my wife's tweets. It's talked about something about being on fire for the Lord. So I was like, oh man, that's a pretty cool tweet. Let me check out her profile. And so I clicked on her profile, was reading through her tweets. I was like, man, this girl loves the Lord. She's genuine. She's awesome. She seems fun. Clicked on her picture and I was sold. I was like, oh, she's beautiful too. All right. She's got she's a full package. And so I clicked the follow button and she didn't follow me back. And so I was like, oh man, okay. So I got to work at this. And so we ended up, I think I ended up tweeting at her, and she finally tweeted back to me. I was like, all right, my foot's in the door. Keep working at this. Let's go. And then she hates to admit this part of the story, and she lived it down for the longest time until we went back and actually looked at the tweets. And she had tweeted something saying, Snapchat me, I'm bored, and gave her Snapchat handle out. And so me, being a bored junior hockey player, I took full advantage of that. And I knew I kind of only had one shot at it. So I sent her a video of me lip singing to Taylor Swift. And that blew the door wide open. And so she started talking to me from that point on. And after my season so we had started talking for about 3.5 weeks, a month. And after my season ended, I drove down and I met her and her family. And then the rest is kind of history from there.
So tell me, I love this part of the story too. Tell me a little bit about how she figured out that you even played hockey.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
think
Yep.
that I think two things about the story. One, I think it's funny, but two, I also think it talks a lot about you and your humility specifically. But tell that story.
Yeah. So I was playing junior hockey in Chicago, and it's the top junior league in North America for people who are trying to go the college route. And so it was a good league. I had been drafted by the Canes the year before, and so this season I was just playing hockey, doing well, whatever. And when I was down there with her and her family, Kylie knew that I played hockey and everything, but she didn't know how serious it was. I guess she kind of thought the only hockey she grew up with was her high school team and just like going to high school games or whatever. And so she didn't think it was too serious. And so I'm sitting there in the living room with her mother at the time, and she's back in her room getting ready. And her mom looks at me and she goes, "All right, Jacob, I have a question for you." And I'm like, "All right, what do you got?" And Kylie comes running out of her back room like, "Oh dear, what's my mom about to ask?" kind of thing. And her mom looks at me and she goes, "So I Googled you, and you're drafted in the NHL." And Kylie kind of looks at me and goes, "What?" And so yeah, she didn't know that I was drafted by the Canes or anything, and her mom was just like, "What does that mean?" Blah blah blah. And so from that moment on, Kylie kind of realized like, "Oh man, like this guy's serious about his hockey stuff." But yeah, and so she's enjoyed it. She didn't really understand the game of hockey that much. So when I was at my freshman year at Colorado College, she would come out, fly out to some games, and at the time that would have been my 9-year-old little brother explaining the game of hockey to her, teaching her the rules of icing and offsides and everything like that. And so she really didn't know much about hockey at all, but now she's the one explaining to people how the game's played.
Man, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
It cracks me up every time I hear that. That's just knowing you and knowing Kylie. I can totally see that situation, playing out.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So speaking of which, hockey family. So I remember during the All Star game specifically, they were talking about your sister some and just her very notable career with playing hockey, as well as obviously your brothers as well, and even those that aren't playing professionally just are great hockey players. So tell us a little bit about your family and their hockey experience.
Yeah, so my older brother, he's the one that got us into ice hockey. He was playing roller hockey when he was younger, and he watched the movie The Mighty Ducks, and he was like, "Mom, Dad, I want to try ice hockey." And so that kind of got the ball rolling with going on the ice. And yeah, he eventually hung up his skates in senior year of high school to focus on baseball and football because he was really enjoying that. And so he did that, and now he's a police officer in Colorado. I actually came out last March of 2019, and he played for the Raleigh Police Department when they played the firefighters last year. He had a goal and an assist in that game and a concussion, and so he definitely enjoyed the hockey game, I should say. And then my sister followed his footsteps with the hockey as well, and she played with the boys up until she was 14 years old, which is kind of a long time for a girl to be playing with the boys because boys start maturing at that age, and the game gets pretty physical once you kind of hit that 13, 14 age range. But she was still out there playing with the boys, beating them up. I mean, she didn't back down from anybody. And then she actually went as a senior in high school. She had graduated as a junior, so her senior year of high school was actually her freshman year in college, and she was playing for the University of North Dakota and had a great freshman year. But each one of her years in college, she had torn her ACL. And so by senior year, she had 3 ACL tears and meniscus tears. And so she was kind of boggled down by injuries. But each time her season was going well, the U.S. Olympic team had kept contacting her, asking her to come out for the tryout. But then she would get hurt, and so she wouldn't be able to play. And so she was kind of bummed about that. But now she's a teacher looking to pursue some principal roles in school back in Colorado. And then my younger brothers, Josiah is 21, and he's a freshman at Colorado College, or just was this past year. And so he's going into his sophomore year next year. And obviously his season got cut short as well with Corona and everything. And then my younger brother, Jeremiah, is 15, and he's playing in Colorado, just youth hockey. He played for the U15 AAA team this year. U16 AAA team this year, and he'll probably play for the same team next year. But he's just following kind of the same path that me and Josiah took.
Love it, man. Yeah. That's always been impressive to hear just all the talent and hockey in that family.
A lot of competitions going on in that family. On the ice and on the ice and off the ice, always a competition.
I've played golf with many of you guys at the same time. I've seen that competition firsthand.
Yes.
But with that being said, tell me a little bit about the draft. I think your draft story always kind of cracks me up a little bit. And so you're talking about the draft with Kylie. So share what that was like.
Yeah. So leading up to the draft, that would have been my first year in Chicago. I had gotten a family advisor at that point, and he was kind of the one helping like navigate conversations with NHL teams leading up to the draft. And I had maybe talked to 3 or 4 teams leading up to the draft. So when the draft rolled around, he was like, yeah, there's a possibility you could go as early as the second round, or you might not get drafted at all. So we'll kind of just see what happens. And so we go to draft day, and obviously first round's the night before, rounds 2 through 7. And so first round, I don't even know if I watched. I wasn't expecting to get drafted, so I don't even think I turned on the TV. But then the next day, I was nervous. I was excited to see what would happen and everything. And so I'm sitting there on the couch, just following it on the TV. My mom's back in the kitchen, following it on her iPad or computer. And so we're watching round 2 goes by, round 3 goes.
Let me interrupt there by saying you're watching the draft that you, in my opinion, seemed like you got a reasonable chance to be drafted by yourself. So this clearly was not a big moment. At least you weren't treating it as a big moment for you guys, right?
Yeah, and with the NHL draft, it's different than some of the other leagues, okay. And just that if you're not guaranteed to go, or like pretty positive you're going in like the first couple rounds, you might not even go to the draft. And so wow. We ended up staying home. Just it was all the way in Pittsburgh, and just wasn't worth it to us to go to possibly have the name called or possibly not. And so we're watching there on the couch, and round 4 comes along, and then I see my name roll across the bottom. I hear my mom scream in the background, ah! And then I see my name roll across the bottom to the Carolina Hurricanes, and I'm super pumped, but at the same time I'm kind of like, okay, I never talked to Carolina once leading up to this draft. I didn't talk to him at all. And so I'm like, my dad's outside mowing the lawn, and so I run outside. I was like, Dad, I got drafted by Carolina, blah, blah, blah. And he just gives me a thumbs up and goes right back to mowing. And so it was just a kind of funny story with him, just all of that leading up to the draft and him just continuing to mow the lawn. But my dad's not much of emotion. And so there's some videos to show that. But so getting drafted by Carolina was awesome. And looking back now, I was kind of questioning, God, why Carolina? Like, that makes no sense. I didn't talk to them at all. But over the past 5 years, and just how God's worked in my life, Kylie's life, and just our life out here as a whole, he totally had his hand over all of that, and just the reason we're here in Carolina. And so it's been awesome to be here, and just to look back on God's sovereignty through all of that is really cool.
Love that, man. So fast forward a little bit, you've been drafted, you're married, you moved to the Raleigh or the Carolina area, not necessarily the Raleigh area, but the Carolina area. So what was that like, kind of starting out, trying to figure this out in new cities, and, whether or not you would play long in the NHL or, what AHL, or what that looked like for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. My wife, so we got married August 7th of 15. And I think it was like August 15th, we were driving out here to North Carolina, me and her, and just kind of starting our lives, out here, really. And so my dad's best friend's kids still lived out here, so we moved in with them when we first got here. Captain practices that started as soon as we got out here, so I was doing those, just kind of trying to get my foot in the door within the organization, and just kind of figuring out where I kind of stood going into the first training camp. And so that was super beneficial for me to be out here and just skate with some of the veterans who live here, who have kids, so some of the older guys. And I remember my first round of golf that I had played out here in Raleigh, we were at Hazen Tree, actually, and I was with Eric Stahl and Cam Ward, and I'm like shaking up on the tee box, like I'm so nervous trying to tee off from my first shot. Just it was just kind of surreal to me being there with two of the most iconic figures in Carolina's organization, and so
Yeah.
that was really cool. And then just going through that first training camp was awesome. We didn't know what to expect, right? They had told me, yeah, you might be in the AHL for a couple years, or like maybe year and a half, 2 years, and we'll see how you progress, and you might have a good shot of making the NHL. And then I got me and Brett Pesce were the last two cuts from camp that rookie year, and we got sent down to Charlotte. And then I think 10 games in the year he got called up, and then 14 games into the year for me, I got called up, and then we've both been here ever since. So it's been kind of a cool journey to walk with him as well.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's super cool. Well, let me take a quick pause here for those listening. We are going to get to a Q&A portion here on the back end. So there's a Q&A function within Zoom. So feel free to go ahead and if you have some questions, you can go ahead and ask those now, and I'll read those out as we get to them later. And the other thing too that we do with each of these webinars is anyone who's on the webinar is entered in a chance to win a free event planning that we're going to draw on May 15th. Every time you watch a webinar, you're entered again. So if you watch multiple, you're entered multiple times. And if you're not a nonprofit, or you're just watching this because you're a Canes fan or you love Jacob, then you're allowed to gift this if you win to the nonprofit of your choice. So that's definitely a perk. It's a $15,000 value that we're trying to incentivize people to hang out with us, watch these webinars live. And also, if you see other webinars coming up as we continue to do this encouragement series and some great informational webinars for nonprofit leaders and board members, you can check out our website where we have these recorded, where you can watch later and go back and check them out. So with that, Jacob, let's jump back in. So you're in Carolina now. You've been playing, obviously, as Canes fans. We'll know you've been having great success in Carolina. You had your initial contract. What was it like for you being able to sign that second contract that gave you a little bit more security, a little bit more stability, and knowing, for the next 7 years, obviously trade is an option in your world always, but for the most part, I can imagine this first few years, you're still trying to find your way a little bit, and now you've got a little bit more of establishment. What was that like?
Yeah, it was awesome. We were always, for the first couple of years, we loved it here, obviously, and then going into it was the summer after my second season, we were working on the extension, and so in my mind, I think I always wanted to be here for a long time, especially with how much we loved it the first 2 years. And then they offered a 7-year deal, and we're like, oh man, that would be so great. That's by the end of that contract, I'm going to be 31 years old, 10 years into my career. And so it's kind of crazy. Just how long of a contract it is awesome. Just like you said, have that stability, have that security of being here for a while and knowing you're going to be here. But again, like you said, there is that trade option, and hopefully that never happens. But again, that's part of the business. And so, but at the same time, like we absolutely love it here. And crazy to think I'm already in year 5 of my career, and just going into year 3 of that contract now is just kind of crazy, just how fast it goes by. But no, it's awesome. Obviously we love it here. We love the organization. We love from owner down is great people, great organization. They care about you, and obviously the community here in Raleigh's unbelievable. PNC's awesome. It was easily the loudest building I've ever played in last year during playoffs. It was absolutely nuts. And so, no, it's just been super fun.
So along those lines, you're talking about just the organization. What's it been like with Rod as a coach in that transition? And I know there's him never being a head coach before, just unknowns for a lot of people, but obviously it seems to have turned out pretty well. So what's that been like?
Yeah, Roddy's great. I mean, everyone knows the type of player he was. If you kind of follow the game, and just hardworking, everyone respects him on and off the ice. He was just always going 100% whenever he was on the ice. That's how he was as a player, and he hasn't changed one bit as a coach. I mean, he cares about you as a player and as a person. More importantly, as a person, he cares about you. And then obviously his work ethic is still there, and he's in the gym every single day. At the rink, you see him working out. You see him, just the intensity that he brings to it is awesome to see, and his passion for the game, and he loves to win. And so and he loves to win. And he cares about the game. But like I said, I think the respect and the care he has for the players is what I love the most about him.
Love it. All right, so fast forward to this year. Talk about a year. I mean, 2020 is a year that I think we will all remember. Just looking at specifically in your life, in your role, you guys were on a hot streak. You just got inside to a spot in the playoff in the standings. Only a few games left in the regular season, and getting pumped and excited to go into the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, everything comes to a screeching halt. So tell me a little bit about what that day was like. I mean, I remember looking back, I think it was March 12th, may have been the day, give or take a day. And we were even texting. I was in Tennessee, and I mean, things were canceling left and right. And, at one point we were going to play hockey we were going to do, maybe something without fans. And then a few hours later it was canceled, and just no one really knew what was going on. So it must've been such a whirlwind. And so what was that like for you as you're watching that play out that day, and also kind of the feeling, maybe if you've talked to some guys on the team or just, the organization as a whole, what's the feeling around the organization about that?
Yeah, it was hectic. I mean, no one knew necessarily exactly what was going on. We're sitting there in the hotel in Jersey and trying to, even the night before, there was speculation like, oh, what's going to happen? I think, was it the night before that the NBA had postponed their season?
I think so.
And so we're like, are we following suit? What's going to happen? And so waking up, or even going to bed that night on the 11th, was like, do I try to sleep as well as I normally do for a game, and just have that same mentality, same routine that you get into? And so the day, March 12th in itself, was kind of strange. Woke up, had my breakfast, but didn't have, I don't know, it was just the whole mindset around it. You weren't kind of in that game mode mindset that you're typically in and preparing for. And so you eat breakfast, and you have some people from our management or just PR person telling you hey, there's a possibility this is going to happen. We'll keep you guys updated. And so my mind wasn't in it at that point. I was like, oh, what's gonna happen, and just kind of thinking about the future. And then obviously we got the notification that, hey, game's postponed tonight. We'll see what happens. And now to look back on it and be almost what, month and a half, 2 months into this quarantine, and it's just been kind of crazy. We're not allowed to go into the rink at all right now. The league has mandated, along with the CDC and stuff, kind of following their guidelines, but the league's kind of mandated a self-quarantine, stay at home as much as possible. And so the league's trying their best to make sure the players are staying safe, and we're just kind of taking it day by day, and waiting for this thing to pass. Obviously, we still all want to finish the season and play. And like you said, we kind of jumped into a playoff spot the game before, and so that was nice. I think we were on a 3-game win streak, so we're feeling good. We're starting to get some goalies back from the crazy Toronto game. So Mrazek had just gotten back, and we're starting to find our groove again. And so it was just a weird, very strange point, just for everything to kind of shut down completely.
Yeah, I hear you, man. So with that, what now that like you said, we're 6 weeks into it, what was the progression from March 12th to now, and how you've approached this? Maybe also we have a question from Tim Corley about what have you been doing through COVID to stay in shape as well as in skating form. So, maybe answer that question with a follow-up of, did it look different on March 14th than it does on today? Just not knowing, are you playing again in a month? Is it 4 months from now? You obviously want to stay in shape, but you may not be going, the full 9 yards every single day like you would have if there's a game tomorrow. So what does that look like for you to how you stay in shape for that and get ready for whenever the season does resume?
Yeah, so I think to start, we thought, oh, maybe this might last maybe just a couple weeks, and then we'll be playing shortly with no fans, and it might just be a little bit of just a short hiatus. And so the first week was really strange. I think March 12th, I think it was a Thursday, and I think on Sunday was the first time I worked out from that. And I remember just being in Emerson, our daughter's playroom, and with a jump rope and just doing body weight stuff, and just getting her room all sweaty and stinky. But then we realized it was going to be longer than that. So eventually I contacted our strength coach, and I borrowed some equipment from the rink, but we still did our social distancing while getting the stuff. He brought it outside of the rink. I couldn't even go into the locker room or anything. He was wearing gloves when he loaded it into my truck and everything. And so trying to stay safe, but I haven't been on the ice since March 11th because we had a practice today in Jersey before the game. And so I haven't been on the ice since March 11th. And so it's hard to stay in on ice shape when you aren't able to get on the ice. But no, just been working out in the garage. I got an assault bike, set of dumbbells and jump rope, and so just trying my best to stay in shape and trying to mix it up just so I don't get bored with workouts. There's only so much you can do in the garage, and so it's been fun trying to get the wife to work out with me, but still working on that. So but yeah, it's weird. I think the mindset now is just waiting. Now that people are finding out more and more about this, is just when are we going to play, if we're going to play, and how's it going to be? Are we going to be playing without fans for the rest of this season if we do finish it out? And then are we going to be playing without fans in next, like in the 2020-2021 season? And so and how long is this going to last for? And so a lot of just unknown about the future with that from that sense, but just kind of got to take it in stride and see how it comes.
So along the line of playing without fans, I know when this was all happening back on March 10th or 11th, and NBA first came out and said they would play without fans before ultimately canceling. I think Steph Curry had the suggestion of, that he would love for the AV guys to still play the music, in between timeouts and into periods, and try to keep the atmosphere in the stadium as much like a game day as it can be. There's been people talking about would they pump in fan noise just to help, continue to create some noise there. So what are your thoughts on if you do play without fans? One, do you think any of that will happen? And two, what do you want to happen? Would you prefer to be more quiet, or do you enjoy all the noise and the routine of a typical game day?
Yeah, I think the noise from just a normal game is it would be weird playing in a silent building. And so I think it's to some degree, yes, still going on with the regular game day routine. I think it'd be weird to get the Jumbotron going with certain videos that they normally would do, like the kiss cam. Obviously you can't be throwing a kiss cam on the screen when there's no fans in the crowd. And I don't know, so from that kind of standpoint, it'd be weird to see how they operate it. And I think they would change a lot of the broadcasting strategies, maybe throwing stuff on the TV where we can't see it as players, but we kind of know what's going on, just to try to engage the fans a little bit more from their couches or wherever they're watching at. Mm-hmm. But no, it'd be weird. I mean, just having no noise going, silent building, you can hear every little word that's going on between each team. I feel like a lot more trash talking probably. Maybe the mics would pick it up. I don't know. It'll just be something that we've never dealt with before. I mean, and so it'll be. I have no idea what to expect if it does come to that. Yeah,
and especially for you guys, truly, it's pretty universally known that PNC Arenas, if not the loudest, is I think universally accepted is considered one of the loudest in the National Hockey League. So being able to lose that advantage, I know it's not going to be great for you guys, but that's where it'll be interesting, like you said, to see how they respond and what they do, what tricks they have up their sleeve to be able to make it somewhat of a normal experience, both for the players and for the fans watching. So with that, let's get back to like just the coronavirus and how maybe, has there been any disappointments that have come out of this for you? Are you disappointed the season stopped? Are you grateful that the season stopped, that you get this break? I know you're so family oriented, and I'll ask you here in a second about the adoption and just your family that has grown recently in the last little over a year, and just being able to think through, is this a blessing in disguise for you, or is this a disappointment, or a little bit of both?
I I think the simple answer is a little bit of both. Obviously, love the game of hockey. We were, like you said, we had just jumped back into the playoff spot. We had 13 games left. We were starting a good upwards trend at a good point in the season. I mean, I think from the year before, we know that once you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. And so I think last year we clinched with 3 games left in the season, right? And so this year we were kind of finding our stride, hopefully going right into playoffs. And so in some ways, yes, it was a little disappointing that the season kind of got put on stop. But at the same time, for myself at least, it's just hockey. And so I know there's a bigger picture to that. I know that the family time I have been able to have right now without having any commitments at all to, I mean, even during normal summertime for us as hockey players, we don't really have any obligations besides our workouts. And for myself, staying here in Raleigh, I'm still going into the rink 4 times a week to get that workout in. But now I've been home for 6 weeks, and the only time I left the house is to go pick up my wife Starbucks or something and go through the drive-thru or go to Chipotle,
Right.
And grab some lunch. But so really not having any obligations outside of being a full-time dad. And so that's been awesome. And like you said, with our daughter, she's at a super fun age right now. She just turned a year old on April 12th. And so to be able to be here for her birthday was awesome. To be able to help be here for my wife's birthday, which was on April 8th. That's the first time. It might be the second time I've actually been here for my wife's birthday, and the time we've been married and out here in Raleigh. And so just to be able to be here for a lot of things that I'm typically not able to be here for has been a blessing to be able to serve my wife, serve my daughter in ways that I've never really been able to be like fully engaged for a long period of time. I think Emerson's finally getting the hang of saying dad, and I don't think that would have happened if season was still going on.
Wow.
But I don't know, just little things like that to where it's definitely a blessing to be here. And yes, there's disappointments in not being able to play hockey right now and go through all that. But I think the bigger picture is just the great family time that I've been able to be here and spend with them.
I love that. So Ty, a large part of our audience here, as I mentioned, are nonprofit leaders or volunteers or board members. And so, tying this a little bit more into their context, I mean, what I hear you saying is, although, there's just disappointments, I mean, it seems like overall this is the encouragement, the blessing is that you put things in proper priority, and that you've been able to lean on your family and your faith through this time. And although hockey is something you love and it's not there, it's really a blessing to be able to have this time with your family and being able to have sweet Emerson say dad, and that's a memory you'll have forever. In these precious months at that age, and like you said, her 1-year-old birthday, just being able to be present for her, and all those things that you don't really think about as a fan. When we think about the team, we think of you guys as players, but to be able to think about your personal life too, and the excitement and the encouragement. So with that being said, what would be some encouragement that you would, as a professional that is still trying to be prepared for the unknown? You've had some disappointment, but you've also had a time of rest and a time of being able to pour into your family, which, as the Bible talks about, is just so important. What is something that you would encourage to nonprofit leaders as they process this? They've had a lot of disappointment too, where it seems like the life of a nonprofit leader in crisis means more work and less funds. And that's not across the board, but it's a very stressful time when that happens. And so what would be some encouragement that you would give them as they process this and continue to try to move forward, as well as prepare for what comes next? I mean, when hockey starts back for you, you guys may be jumping straight into the playoffs. And so just like it for them, when life gets back to normal, they're going to be jumping into some serious things right away. So how are you processing that, and what encouragement would you give to them?
I think one of the biggest things I've learned, sorry, there's just a huge bird that landed in my yard, like a huge bird.
Watch out.
Sorry, that was kind of crazy. No, I think one of the biggest things I've learned so far is, and as being a professional hockey player, I'm always doing things. I'm always moving. I'm always going to the rink. I'm always going to work out, whatever it is. And so life was always kind of fast paced for me. But this obviously, and I think with a lot of people, we're finding a lot more time on our hands, and we're really having to slow down life. And so I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, is just that, just because I have all this time now, I don't need to be filling it with things to do. I mean, my life before was busy, and I liked it being busy, but now that it's like God's really using this as a time for myself to just simplify life, slow down. Like you said, really make sure you have your priorities in check. Where I think I'm finding out a lot about myself, and where I put a lot of my priorities in, and what those things are. And so what I value most, and things like that. And so that's been a great hard learning curve for myself, and stuff that I've just been having to pray through, and everything like that. But I think one of the biggest encouragements to me so far is just the community that I do have around me, whether it's you or family or friends, and not necessarily just here in Raleigh, but just the people that I have in my life that I'm able to communicate a lot more with now, than I ever have before, just because everyone's kind of had to do that same thing and slow down, and normal life is different right now. And so just the communication I've been able to have with a lot of people in my life that I typically don't get to have, has been something that's really encouraging for me, to whether it's them reaching out to me or me reaching out to them. I mean, for a couple nights in a row, my wife and I were just FaceTiming random people in our contacts that would never expect it. And then you sit on FaceTime for 30 minutes just catching up, and by the end of the call, they're like, "Oh man, I'm so glad you called. Like, thanks for the encouragement. Like, this is just," and so just to be able to, one, to encourage other people, and two, being able to encourage you. I mean, everyone's kind of going through this. I mean, everyone is going through this, and everyone's kind of dealing with it in their own ways. But it's hitting some people harder than others. It's hitting some people not so hard. I know. I mean, I know for us, obviously, hockey's been stopped, but so that's a bummer. But at the same time, I think we're able to use it, and obviously, for my wife and I, like you said, faith is super important to us, so we want to use it as a time to encourage others that are struggling through this harder than we are. And so I think that's my biggest encouragement, is just to be encouraging to others, and be able to reach out and know that everyone's kind of dealing with this, and see if anyone needs help.
I love that, man. And I think one thing that really popped out there that struck me was the word community, because, you know, obviously community has been stripped away from us, or so we think. I don't think it's been taken away from us. I think it just means we got to be more intentional with it. And I mean, talk about a great example of being intentional by, you know, taking the time to go through to FaceTime people and to talk to them. Even before this, for as long as I've known you, Jamie and I, my wife, have always said that you and Kylie both have been one of the most impressive things to us is how well you're intentional with people and that you love people. And I think as life is busy, it's easy to use that as an excuse and to justify, you know, we just don't have time to engage or to call that person, or you just don't even think about it. But there's no excuse right now when everything's been ripped away and you're just sitting at home. And so it may take a little more work to engage in community, but you also have the time to engage in the community. And I think being intentional and loving those people is going to be good for, you know, your soul, good for everyone, to be able to be encouraged by it and to have those conversations. But the way that it can change that person is huge. And so taking a step back and looking at it from an organization standpoint, so as a nonprofit, you know, let's lean on our community now more than ever, both our donors and our volunteers, and figure out how can we just love them. Donors, we ask so much from, but how can we give something back? And it could be just a small handwritten note or a small way to support and to love them who are in our community, but also as nonprofit leaders, know that your community is also other nonprofit leaders, and they know what you're going through. And that's what here at the Institute of Net, we want to help support and create, is continue to love you as a nonprofit leader. We're nonprofit leaders as well. We get it. We can understand, but also connect you with other nonprofit leaders that we can have in that community. And so before I ask a few questions from the audience, this is a great time for me to mention that one thing that we're going to do next week in lieu of our regular weekly webinar is that we're going to put together small groups that nonprofit leaders can sign up for. We'll send an email out, look for that on our social media and our website as well on how to sign up for those. But essentially what we want to do is create Zoom calls with four to five nonprofit leaders. The goal would be able just to have a conversation. We'll be on the conversation to help facilitate it, but we won't be the ones leading it. It'll be you as a nonprofit leader talking to each other. And the hope in that is that we can encourage each other, give each other ideas. Where are we struggling with? Where some things are going well? And if you don't have a great community of other nonprofit leaders, I think this could be a really great time for you to be able to connect with that and figure out and hopefully learn and be encouraged through this, but continue those relationships even after this coronavirus goes away, because community is so important. And I hope that's one of the main lessons we learn as a community and a nation as a whole through this, is how valuable our community is. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Jacob. And like I said, we just have a few minutes left here. So I'm going to wrap it up with some questions that we've been having that have been coming in from the audience. Please feel free, if you got any questions, go ahead and write those in the Q&A box. We'll try to get to those as best as we can. We have a question from Micah Patchton. He wrote, how do you share your faith to your teammates? So I know you're very intentional with loving people, as I mentioned. And so how do you do that specifically with the guys on your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. The biggest way I found, for myself at least, and just for the situation a lot of the guys are in, is just like you said, Mark, intentionality, I think, is the biggest key. And so I try to build relationships with these guys, and I found that I can't stand in the Bible or in the middle of the room with the Bible and just preach the gospel on a chair and beat them over the head with the Bible all the time. But a lot of the best conversations that I've had with guys have just come up over the dinner table. And so a lot of times on the road, or we're always going out to eat the night before a game when we are on the road. And so a lot of good conversations have happened over the years of just over the dinner table eating food with guys, and whether it's me blatantly sharing or them asking questions about it. And my first 2 years in the league, I roomed with the same guy. And me and him had a lot of good conversations in the room as well, of just certain things relating to the gospel, questions he's had about the Bible. And so building those relationships is key. And a lot of those guys know what I stand for, and they'll poke fun at me or make fun of me here and there, and all in a good heart. But I think when it comes down to the crunch time, a lot of those guys know that they can come to me with serious stuff as well. And so just being there for those guys, like Mark said, loving on these guys well, and just loving them for who they are, and not necessarily caring how they're performing on the ice or anything along those lines, but just loving them where they're at, and just always making sure I'm available for them for questions, just for conversation. And so that's one of the biggest ways I found that, just to love on these guys, love on them well.
That's great, man. So David Perkins has a question. What are a couple of your hobbies? So obviously this is the time to do them. So what are some hobbies that maybe new hobbies, if you have any new that came out of this? I think a lot of people are trying their hands at different things, but also what are just some hobbies in general you've had for a while?
Well, Mark's mentioned one of them. One of my favorite things to do outside of hockey is play golf. And so I've played only twice so far during this quarantine. Just getting out, playing golf, nice weather. Mark and I we walked 9 holes the other day social distancing, of course.
Of course.
But following all those guidelines. But no, so golf is something I really love. Love board games. It's hard to play a lot of board games right now, though, with only 2 people, and so that hasn't been happening too much. But no, I love hanging out with people, which is hard during social distancing, and so my wife loves to go on walks. We've gone on a walk, I think, every single day so far. I've probably walked a lot of mileage over this quarantine time, but I like playing video games. I played a little bit of video games over this time, not as much as I typically do now that I'm a father. I don't find as much fun in them as I used to, but I'll still hop on the PlayStation every now and again. But just staying active, honestly, anything athletic to me is fun. My wife and I, in our garage, I was working out and she just came in with a volleyball and started hitting it against the wall. And next thing we know, we're playing a game of volleyball ball, as we like to call it. And so anything athletic is something that I can get down with.
Love it. Yeah, that's great, man. I've always said that I think hockey is probably your second calling. I think your main calling in life has been to be a camp counselor someday, because we go and hang out with you, and we're playing board games, and you've got 5 or 6 yard games set up in your yard with Chippo and the Foursquare in the air that you play, and cornhole and spike ball. And I mean, it's just, we have a blast out there. A bunch of people from church, Bailey Baptist Church, where you go, and just being able to hang out and enjoy each other's company in your backyard with your yard game. So for those of you watching, don't be surprised if Jacob and Kylie start a camp at some point in their life, because I think it's in their blood, whether they know it or not. But hey, man, well, I appreciate you doing this and jumping on. I think that's the end of our time. And hopefully for you watching, this was somewhat encouragement for you, just trying to get a little bit of a change of pace from our regular broadcasted information, and mix it up and be able to get to know Jacob a little bit, and the time that he is using to during this coronavirus, how he's pouring into his family, and just a little golf here and some other things that he's doing. I know they've been working in their backyard and doing stuff there as well. So just hopefully you got to know Jacob a little better through that, and continue to watch these. So look at our website. We've got if you enjoyed this one, we have a great list of guests coming up that are other pro athletes to some musicians, and some key business leaders, key political leaders that I think you would really enjoy to get to know and to hear how they're processing this coronavirus, but also just some of their story, like you heard of Jacob's. So Jacob, thanks again, man, for joining us. And we hope that you are staying in shape enough so when we do get the season back, you guys will continue to stay in this hot streak and go deep in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and everyone stay safe out there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. And thanks so much to everyone, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah.